Why are so many people overwhelmed with clutter? Disorganization is causing shame, suffering, friendships, time, money. People just like you wondering where and how to create an organized lifestyle. This podcast offers expert tips and solutions for your clutter obstacles. My name is Rachel Seavey, and this is the Hoardganize podcast. Hey, collectors, welcome back to the Hoardganize podcast. Today on our show, I have Laura Spaulding. Laura is the founder and franchiser of Spaulding Decon, a leading decontamination company in the United States. After 7 years in law enforcement and serving in the military, Laura Spaulding started Spaulding Decon as a one-woman show. In 2016, she franchised the company, and she now has 53 locations across the country. She's been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Inc. magazine, and Entrepreneur magazine, and she's become a featured expert in growing a dirty business. In 2020, Laura took the company to a 608% growth to make the Inc. 5000 list at 768. Laura earned her spot on the Entrepreneur Franchise 500 list in less than 4 years of franchising. Laura created and produced the popular YouTube series Crime Scene Cleaning, and she has a podcast called Talking Decon. With over 50 million views, Spaulding Decon has become a household name and the go-to for their services. Laura's launched several charitable acts like the Holiday Hoarding Giveaway, where her company provides a free cleaning for one lucky winner per year. Laura also gives one free franchise to a veteran every year. Laura's goal is to give back to those who deserve it and create goodwill in the community where they serve. Hey, collectors. Today I have an amazing woman on the podcast. She is our first guest interview of the year, and her name is Laura Spaulding. You have already heard her intro. I've already told you a little bit about her, but I'd like to introduce her to you and ask you, Laura, welcome. I'm super excited to have you here. Thank you for being on the show. I have a million.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. I'm happy to answer them. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, Laura, what got you into this kind of a business? What were you doing before Spaulding Decon?
So I was in law enforcement before Spaulding Decon, and I kind of had the idea to start cleaning up crime scenes when a victim's family member was under the impression that the police were going to clean it. So I started doing that, and then one of my large clients right off the bat said, we can't find anybody to clean up this hoard, and since you do crime scenes, we figured it wouldn't faze you. So that was kind of how I got into hoarding, just by accident, by being asked about it, and then I was introduced to the dynamics of hoarding.
Wow. So you went as an officer to a gory crime scene, and a family member was just, I'm sure, devastated.
Right.
Because, crime scene cleanup is such a service. And I'm sure, a lot of people don't really understand what's entailed. And I was reading one of your other articles, and it kind of, you expressed having just challenges, finding people to help you do those kinds of cleanup, and that, you said somewhere like the average lifespan of a technician is 6 to 9 months. And I understand that. Even with just only doing hoarding cleanup, I'm not sure that people understand just how emotionally and physically and spiritually exhausting these kinds of cleanups can be. I go through people a lot. People say, "Oh my gosh, I want to help you. I want to clean up these houses and help." And then 2 days in, they're like, girl, my back hurts. Like, I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
it was this much work. I'm so sorry to waste your time. I get that. And so I would think it's the same kind of a deal. And so it kind of brings me into the next topic of another thing that I read about you that just resonated. This kind of the crime scene cleanup and the remediation business is really kind of a man's world. I put it out there like that. I'm sorry if I've offended anyone, certainly my son I've offended. But, I've come against that as a woman entrepreneur in this business. There are franchises at Spaulding. I've worked with them. Actually, I love Carol. I don't know if you know him personally, but Carol out here in Danville, shout out. He is the best.
Awesome.
But it's really hard to find women. And when I started reading about you, I was like, oh my gosh, she's like amazing. Because honestly, I never have had the courage. I've been declined loans many times. I've begged angel investors. I've done so many things to grow collector care and gotten shut down. And when I read on your fifth time, you were smart about it. And I was like, dang, she is amazing. So I want my listeners to know that I respect you. There have
Thank
been
you.
times where I have talked about, our hiring crime scene cleaners, the right fit for you. And, sometimes it is and it isn't. But I feel like now kind of getting to know you and reading about what's important to you, that there might actually be a franchise out there that is compassionate and that I can support. And I have referred Spaulding just because I've made a personal relationship, but I think it's important for listeners, across the country, because you have a lot of franchises,
Mm-hmm.
to know that some of these outfits actually are good. And there is care and thought that goes into the cleanup process and training. And, that I found just with other companies that really gets lost along the way.
Yes.
And where I'm such a niche is just with the compassion, because I haul trash and clean up squalor all day.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like the energy I bring in and so it's just nice to have somebody to admire in the same field. So
Oh,
I
thank
really
you so
want to
much.
thank you for being persistent
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
in your business, because you actually have smaller people like me that are like, she's awesome, and I
Yeah.
honestly,
I think most women struggle though with that because we don't get as many opportunities or definitely funding. Only 2% of venture capital goes to women. So the struggle is definitely there, and it's across all different sectors. It's not just our type of service. It's businesses everywhere. Women and minorities are just overlooked for funding and support.
yep, yep. And it's so you're just super inspiring, and I love
Thank you.
that. And I have some questions. I mean, you've done crime scene cleanup, which I think is pretty explanatory, but like meth lab, I'm looking at my notes, decontamination, to me, that's like Breaking Bad stuff. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
is it like, just as a civilian thinking and reading your profile, I'm like, wow, that sounds so intense.
Yeah, I think Breaking Bad was very, very accurate in manufacturing of meth and the meth trade. Of course, it didn't show any of the requirements, but it definitely alluded to the fact that this was toxic. Like the main character was always very responsible in wearing a respirator every time he cooked because he knew that there was, a terrible after effects to it. Then I don't know if you remember the part where they were hooking up with termite companies where they were tenting the houses,
Oh
and then
yeah.
they would go in there and then they would set up another containment area to cook in, and the reason that they did that is to avoid contamination in the rest of the house.
Wow, that's heavy duty. That's really intense. And you've personally gone in and done all those kinds of jobs.
Yeah, I have. Actually, the last meth lab that I think I did personally was in San Francisco.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so local. Yeah, so that was just really impressive to me. And then I just wanted to ask you some kind of hoarding situation questions, because you kind of see when you get phone calls, a lot of the times it'll be the person themselves, I'm sure, and they need it cleaned up right away. I like to tell my clients, because I do a lot of consulting and coaching, before you have a large cleanup company come in, what are some things that you recommend that people do to prepare so that things that are important to them aren't lost or shuffled?
I like to tell them to prepare a list of the items that maybe they're looking for or they want, maybe they haven't seen in a long time, but they know that it's in the house somewhere. So then we can disseminate that to our crews and specifically look for those items. And then what we try to do is kind of get blanket type statements, like, for example, all paperwork that you find, we want it separated and shredded. So that way we don't have to ask for each, particular room or, a bunch of paperwork that we find. If there's another blanket statement, like about clothing, maybe I only want the clothing in the master bedroom, the rest of it can be donated. Things like that help us move quicker through the property, and that way we're not having to stop and ask them every single time, because that gets tiresome, and they typically have a pretty low threshold because their anxiety is pretty high.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. Do you ever find that, have you ever turned down a job?
Never.
Yes. Oh my
Never.
God. You're amazing. Okay, that's good. And then what tell us about your best story, like the most severe case and then the best outcome. Just, something that you've been able to personally see through from like A to Z, kind of a like, wow, this person was really able to change.
Well, in terms of the change, that's difficult because we initially do our service and then sometimes we won't hear from them for a year or two. And then if we do hear from them again, it's typically they've relapsed and they need help again. Or they've passed on and the family wants us to come in and kind of help clean it out. But one story that I always remember is a mother-daughter that lived together that were extreme hoarders, cat hoarders as well. And they never let anyone in their house for just many, many years. Well, they both passed away inside the home, and it was in a horrible, horrible condition. And the surviving daughter and son wanted nothing to do with it. So what I ended up doing is getting a list from them of the items that they wanted, just pulling those items out. And then I ended up purchasing the property as is from them. So they walk away with a check, the items that they wanted, and then I ended up rehabbing it and turning it into a rental property.
Wow, that's a great story. Yeah.
Yeah, we actually documented it all on YouTube. It's the show is called Pet Cemetery, and I think there's a first, a second, and maybe even a third part to show kind of the beginning, the middle, and the end.
Oh my gosh, I'm definitely going to watch that. That's super.
That was one of my favorites for sure.
And you have like a huge following. You really do.
Yes.
You have TikTok, like you're awesome. How can people find you? Like, you have a YouTube show, and is it a crime scene cleaning show?
Yep, on YouTube it's at Crime Scene Cleaning. TikTok is the same, and so is Instagram at Crime Scene Cleaning, and then Facebook is at Spaulding Decon.
Wow. And do you document actual cleanings or?
Yes, we do.
Wow, I think people would find that really interesting. You have 23 locations, is that right?
56.
56. Holy mackerel. Okay.
Yeah.
56 locations. Okay. So it's Spaulding Decon, and people just give you a call. Do they go to your website? Like, what is your process?
Any of the above. They can call in 24 hours a day, set up an estimate. They can submit photos online to get an estimate. They can fill out a form to get an estimate, whatever they want to do.
It's nice.
Yeah, I think we work with a lot of professional organizers. There's 5 levels of hoarding. We don't typically do levels 1 and 2. Usually an organizer does that. We'll do 3, 4s, and 5s. That's where, the introduction of, hazardous waste or, biohazard or needles or anything like that we have to clean up. It's typically kind of over what an organizer would do. So that's kind of where we would come in at that point.
Yeah, it's a great connection to have an organizer and a cleanup company together,
Mm-hmm.
And I can recognize that because it is a lot of work. And you do give estimates, prices are all over the place, but I always tell people, like, what is the cost of a happy life? Like it's priceless, really, so definitely encouraging to call Spaulding Decon if you're terrified, if you didn't hold up in the pandemic and you've got your stuff everywhere and you're ready for a fresh start. I'm going to follow you on YouTube and all those. I hope you don't think I'm a stalker. I just,
Not at all.
And
you and 800,000 of your closest friends.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. If
Yeah.
you're not following Laura Spaulding yet online, you should, because she's awesome. She's a badass.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'll have links to everything. I'll make a list of your recommendations and suggestions. And thanks again for being on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Hoardganize podcast. Please make sure you're subscribed and join our Hoardganize podcast Facebook page and get additional tips and challenges.